Joining me right now, I thought his move was very interesting. Congressman Chip Roy from the Republic of Texas joins me. And Congressman, as always, good to see you. But I have to, you made a very good point. And this was it was called a ploy. But I actually think that it was, I think you made a very good and very logical point, because one of the things that you were doing, and this was over the weekend, is in voting to seat a number of other congressional members. Your logic is that you can't vote to seat these members of Congress from states where, we have this argument and we're contesting results, and then at the same time have the vote to not certify the election or certify the electoral votes. Talk to me a little bit about that, because you seem to be one of few, but it also seems like people are picking sides, lines are being drawn. I want to get into your thought process on that and where you think things are going.
Well, Dana, first of all, good to be on the show. Really appreciate you and Chris and all you do in standing up for liberty. So thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. And look, every single one of us wants Donald Trump to be president, wants him to be sworn in 2 weeks. It would make nothing would make me happier. The fact of the matter is, I believe that there was the widespread adoption of mail-in ballots, which happened in a lot of states before the virus, plus reduction in safeguards, in signature matching and other things, using the virus as an excuse. I think it undermined our ability to elect the president. I do believe that in a number of states. The fact is that we're staring at a situation where states made decisions, and our Constitution, rightfully, in my opinion, under the 12th Amendment, empowers states to send electors to Congress. And we do not want to be in a position where we're empowering Congress to assert its will over states. Neither you nor I nor any conservative wants Nancy Pelosi to tell Texas that our electors won't count because we put a ballot booth in a certain location, or we use voter ID. Or Texas, you just said it. You said Texas did a good job with this election. Well, we did so because we didn't adopt rampant mail-in ballots. We didn't do that. And so we actually carried out an election that worked. But Democrats would say maybe we disenfranchise people. So they might turn our electors down in 2024 or 2028. And if Donald Trump wants to run again to be president in 2024, then he's going to need an electoral college. And so, yeah, I raised the question you just alluded to by forcing a vote, by objecting on Sunday to the seating of the 67 members of Congress, 34 Republicans and 33 Democrats, from the 6 states that have been raised in question. Because I wanted to point out, look, y'all, as frustrated as I am about this, I don't know how we can object to the electors when we're seating my good friend Jody Heisch from Georgia, or my good friend Scott Perry from Pennsylvania, or Andy Biggs or Paul Gosar from Arizona, and then say, wait, we think there's systemic fraud throughout the state. Are there major concerns? Yes. And you know whose feet those need to be dropped at? The state legislatures thereof. The state legislatures are the ones who botched setting up systems that we could all put faith and confidence in. And at the end of the day, we need to move forward, seating the members of Congress. And unfortunately, for those of us who wanted Donald Trump to be elected instead of Joe Biden, I'm going to end up voting to seat the electors tomorrow, because I think that's my constitutional duty, and I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution.
So does that make you part of deep state Congressperson Chip Roy?
Well, I think some will probably allege that, and I'm going to have a lot of work to do with people that are supporters, and including some that are listening, no doubt, to your show right now, because they are rightfully angry.
Right.
And they're angry. And look, I went on Tucker's show last night, and I pointed out this president has stood up for the forgotten American against the swamp, against Wall Street, against corporate cronyism, against China, against open borders, while all of the swamp critters stand in the way. And I hate that we are in this position. But I believe very much that we need to stand up behind the Constitution of the United States. And if I thought for a minute that there was a constitutional avenue for me to reject the electors, I would do it. But the framers empowered states for a reason. And in fact, there was language they specifically looked at and included in the first draft of the Constitution, or at least a draft, that had language in there to put Congress into the decision-making of the manner of the electing and the selection of the electors, and they took it out. They chose not to put it in. You know why? To specifically avoid a political moment like this, where we allow the politics of Congress to decide the presidency. And look, I think at the end of the day, we need to be mindful of preserving that Constitution for our kids and grandkids. And I think history will judge this moment. And I think one last point, Dana. Remember that of the legislatures of those 6 states, 5 of the 6 of them are controlled by Republicans. 5 of the 6 are controlled by Republicans. Not one body has sent a separate slate of electors. We have one slate from each state officially sent to us from each state, and my job is to count them. Those 5 Republican legislatures have sent us one slate. They have not sent us a letter by majority vote saying they question what happened in their states. Not one statewide elected Republican, of whom there are many from those 6 states, has sent us a letter saying we should reject the electors. Not one law enforcement organization has presented a body of evidence to us saying that there was fraud. Do I believe there were concerns? Absolutely. But we got to stand up behind the Constitution and get busy fighting the fight that was right in front of us. And Lord help us. I hope Republicans are showing up today in Georgia.
I hope so, too. I feel like the Republican Party has to have a difficult conversation because in so much of this, we're talking with Congressman Chip Roy of Texas, it feels like it's less a decision on Trump and more a demonstration of frankly incompetency by a number of state Republican parties that actually running elections. I mentioned this with Georgia. I really don't feel, and I know a lot of voters out there feel the same way, that there was enough of a fight put up against Democrats' incessant litigation to win mail-in ballots, or even in Pennsylvania's case, questionably skirt their state constitution in order to have this happen. Voters feel like this might be their only chance to dig their heels in and rectify it. What do you say to people who kind of feel like this might be their last opportunity to correct that?
Well, number one, I feel their pain. I have strong concerns and reservations about what some of these just frankly idiotic members of state legislatures, cowardly members, have made decisions at their state level and making, I think, bad choices. But you know what? Go take it out with them. We believe in federalism for a reason, Dana. We do not want to empower Washington to assert its will over the state legislatures. And so I think that's what's most important. Let's look at Pennsylvania, though, as a specific example. What happened? Well, the legislature, led by Republicans, both House and Senate, passed a bill, Act 77, in 2019, before the virus, that increased mail-in ballots. They shouldn't have done that, but they did. And in doing so, guess what they didn't do? They didn't put a signature requirement in the law. That was stupid, and it's on their feet. And then they're complaining because the Secretary of State then made a change on the signature ballot, or the signature requirement. Well, you know what? I don't like that decision. It was a bad decision. But the legislature, elected by the people, failed the people by not demanding that there was a signature match and by expanding mail-in ballots in the first place. And damned if I'm going to have Congress step into Pennsylvania and go in and tell the Secretary of State or that legislature what they should do. They should fix it their damn selves.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, that's why we have state elections. It's why states are tasked constitutionally. It's why founders explicitly wrote the Constitution in the manner that they did, the way that they did. The states run their elections. It almost feels like bait to have federalized mail-in ballots, doesn't it? Like federalizing elections and taking that right away from the states.
Well, you know, it's a good question. And we're, as you would expect, we're having a lot of debates right now about what we can do to fix things. And you know what? There is a federal role for ensuring that federal elections under the Constitution are carried out correctly. And we will debate that appropriately, but not the wild-eyed crazy stuff that Nancy Pelosi will want to do, taking away the power of the states. Look, here's the ultimate point. If a majority of Republicans vote to reject the electors, it will irrevocably empower Congress to take over the selection of presidential electors. And doing so will almost certainly guarantee that a Democratic House would vote to reject the electors of Texas or any other conservative state based on the reasons I told you before, voter ID, failure to adopt mail-in ballots, and our choice of voting locations or otherwise. If we change things in Washington, all I want to do is make it to where we're voting on one day as much as humanly possible. I think we should have a national holiday. I've gone there. Let's move Veterans Day. Let's make that election day. Let's celebrate veterans. Let's all show up and vote in person. Let's make sure it's valid. And if you're going to vote, it should be on a limited basis on mail-in ballots, should be limited to a very specific time,
right?
And make sure that there's signature matches. I don't know how much I want to insert into states, but we'll have some of those debates and make sure we're following the Constitution in doing so.
Yeah, no, I think those are very good points indeed. We're talking to Congressman Chip Roy of the beautiful Republic of Texas. I have to ask you, Congressman, a lot of people are saying that Republicans could take the House back in 2022. Nancy Pelosi barely held on to her speakership. And then, of course, you have new rules, which is why we used the term congressperson earlier. As a way to mock it. You're so excited to start 2021 with new gender rules, gender language rules. How's that been?
I mean, in fact, I just kind of got into it with the speaker on the floor of the House about an hour and a half ago because my new colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene, we were literally just sitting there talking about the electoral issue, and her mask slipped down about an inch and a half below, like down here below her nose. One of the little rules people came over and said, you got to pull your mask up. And she and I both pulled our mask off pretty much in defiance to this absurdity. And then the speaker walked by and she said, you got to put your mask on. I said, well, why are you allowing people who have known to have the coronavirus a few days before we were on the floor to elect the speaker? You made sure they were there to get you elected. And we kind of tied into it on the floor. But yeah, the rules package that was adopted was absolutely absurd. They're focusing on gender. Do you want this Congress, the Speaker Pelosi, that's going to decide, that you can't say man or woman or grandmother or grandfather? Do you want them to choose the electors for the president? Hell no.
Yeah, you can't say Madam Speaker anymore, I would imagine, now under these new rules.
Well, I'll continue to say Madam Speaker and continue to recognize men and women and, whatever they say on the House be damned. They were trying to limit our free speech, by the way. And we kind of took it to them, and they backed off a little bit. But they still say they'll be monitoring our Twitter activity and sending it up for ethics violations. So I intend to find every way I can to violate whatever those rules are as soon as I possibly can.
There you go. Spoken like a true Texan. Congressman Chip Roy, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing what 2021 has in store. Hopefully it won't be anything like last year. Godspeed.
Amen. God bless you and Chris and everybody.
Good.